Our waitress came back to the table with tears running down her face. So when we ran into the rude customers later, my dad left them a surprise they'll never forget. My dad was the biggest a-hole known to man. He was a lovable a-hole, a compassionate, intelligent, and caring a-hole. But if you poked his beehive, he'd transform into the pettiest a-hole you have ever met. That's what made him the best personality to be around. Before anyone asks, I loved my dad fiercely and miss him every day. He passed way too soon. I have so many stories about this man, but this one is one of my favorites that I hope to pass on to generations. One important thing to know about my dad is that if having the most chemically contagious fart was an Olympic sport, he would have had more gold medals than Michael Phelps. Long car rides with him could be dangerous, and you knew that if dad was in the bathroom before you got there, you waited at least an hour before going in, just to be sure whatever toxic waste he dropped off would no longer smell, especially if he just had a nice rich meal. Dad and I both loved diners, and when we traveled, we would always ask where the good local diners were. On one of our trips touring a university, we arrived at our hotel a little early and our room wasn't ready. The hotel clerk was very apologetic as some of their housekeeping staff had called in sick and they were running behind. It was around 2:30 p.m. and since we hadn't had lunch yet, we asked the clerk for their diner recommendations and they suggested a place not too far from the hotel. Off we go to lunch. It's been over 30 years since we were there, but I still remember how good that food was, and I most definitely remember our waitress, Sandy. Why do I remember her name? Because the couple at the table near us kept yelling it over and over and over again. There were maybe 10 people in the restaurant total, and Sandy was taking care of most of them. She was on the younger side, but she knew her stuff and was no beginner. I always like to ask what the staff likes when I'm making my decisions, and she told me what she liked, what they were known for, and what the day shift grill cook excelled at. As Dad and I were thoroughly enjoying our food, we watched this couple treat Sandy like she was stupid and incompetent. They sent their food back multiple times and said nasty things about Sandy so loud that we had no trouble overhearing them. Every time Sandy came to drop something off or check on us, she just looked more and more frustrated. Since we weren't in a hurry and the restaurant wasn't busy, we took our time with our meal and even ordered dessert. We were still there when the mean couple paid their check at the register. My dad and I looked over abruptly as they were paying because we heard yelling again, but this was their loudest outburst by far. The couple yelled at Sandy personally and said that since her service was so bad, all they were leaving her was $1 tip and that they thought that was being generous. They left, and when Sandy came to give us our check, she looked like she had been crying. Dad went to pay the check and gave her a very generous tip of $100. When we got in the car, he was fuming over the couple, and I got to hear a lecture about how if he ever found out I treated a server like those people had, he would whoop my butt no matter how old I was. We got back to the hotel and had just checked in when another couple walked into the lobby. They headed towards the elevator that we were heading towards, and that's when my dad and I both realized that it was the nasty couple from the restaurant who had been so mean to Sandy. We got on the elevator with them, and they pushed the button for a floor that was just one above ours. Just as the door opened on our floor and I was walking out, my dad paused and let out the largest, wettest, and obnoxious fart I've ever heard from him. He turned around and said while staring at them, "That's for Sandy." He turned back around and walked off toward me, smiling as the elevator door closed, hotboxing the nasty couple in with his equally nasty fart. I laughed so hard I cried. I do feel bad for anyone else who had to ride that elevator after that.